Hello and welcome back to our reflections on the book of James. We are in chapter 3, and over the last days I've focused on verses 7 till 12. Feel free to pause the video and read these verses before you continue listening to my thoughts around it. The truth that I get from today's verses is that our tongue is not designed to be used for both praising God and cursing people. It is in fact designed to be used for praising God only. Praising God with everything I say sounds like a very big challenge to me. And to be honest, I think a lot of what comes out of my mouth does not reflect God's goodness and express my gratitude and praise towards Him. Last Friday in our home group, we listened to Mike's thoughts around the verses 1 to 6, and we looked at our today's verses too. Let me tell you a little bit about what we have discussed. First, I challenged our group with a question. Imagine you talk 10,000 words per day. How many words would be left if you cut out every word or every sentence that does not praise God? The answers were very honest, and we all got to realize how many words we actually say that are not useful when it comes to praising God. By the way, after our home group, I wanted to find out how many words an average person actually talks a day. Apparently, there's a study that found out that women talk an average of 20,000 words a day, whereas men only use 7,000 words. I know it's not our goal to discuss gender questions today, but I found that quite a funny fact. So, lots of words that don't praise God are being formed by our tongue every day. Taming our tongue, though, and keeping everything in that should not be given voice to is nearly impossible. James makes sure we understand how difficult it is. He doesn't just mention animals, but also adds a list with other different types of animals that exist in this world. He mentions birds, reptiles, creatures of the sea, and says that they are being tamed by human beings. James also uses two different tenses here, the past and the present. And by doing so, he makes clear taming animals isn't something that has only happened in the past. It's something that is happening today. We can do it. And if you've ever been to a zoo, you know what James is talking about. I've seen some wild animals in my life, and I can imagine how hard it is to tame them. On a holiday in Thailand, I saw a crowd of elephants crossing a road that we were stuck on in a traffic jam. And just a couple of cars behind us, an elephant went straight towards the mirror of the vehicle, took it with its trunk, smashed it on the ground, stamped on it a couple of times, and kept crossing the road. That was quite scary. Then, while I attended an outdoor Bible school in Canada, we always took precautions to not attract the bears in the area. And I'm really glad I only saw them when we drove past instead of when I was sleeping in my little tent somewhere in the wilderness. Another example, after I had finished school, I went to Brazil for a year, and I lived on a very small and very remote island. And one day I walked past a massive snake. It was huge. It was really terrifying. And I told a local guy about it. He came to kill it with a big stick and a sharp knife. It was a poisonous snake, and it certainly didn't look easy to tame and kill it. Our tongue is poisonous too, says James. It is a restless evil, and it's harder to control the tongue than getting an elephant or a bear living peacefully in a zoo or killing a poisonous snake. One of our home group ladies reminded us of some words that Jesus had told a crowd of people. He said, "What comes out of a person's mouth, that is what makes him unclean. The things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these make a man unclean. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what make a person unclean." You can find these words in Matthew chapter 15, and they totally fit with James 3 verse 10. Praising and cursing people with the same tongue, this should not be. How does my life look like if I always live by this truth? It sounds a bit discouraging to me that James and Jesus both talk about the impossibility of taming the tongue. This reminds me that we do need God and His Spirit in us, so that our hearts are being transformed and our words will reflect Him in us. It's all about coming before Him, asking Him for His Spirit and His guidance. That's what I need to do. In our home group, we've discussed how praising God with our tongues can look like in daily life. And here's 2 ideas we had. First, encouraging the people around us is praising God. Apart from a very interesting discussion around Kiwi and Chinese and German and Japanese culture and how we communicate differently, we realized that it is important for us to be encouraged. And so should we be encouraging others. A lot of times we might find it easier to see what someone has done wrong, what they are not good at, what they should have done but haven't. And if that's easier for us to see, then it'll be easier for our tongue to address it too. Learning to see and to express what someone has done right, even if it's something that we normally take for granted. What they are good at and what they have done, that's the bigger challenge. And doing so in daily life is praising God. Telling my husband, thanks for doing the dishes. I have to say, I hate doing the dishes, and I'm so glad that he's my personal dishwasher. Saying thanks for doing the dishes is praising God. Telling the kids, thank you for being quiet this morning so I could have a little sleep in. That is praising God. Or telling a student, even though you're struggling with this task, I see how much effort you've put into it, and I encourage you to keep practicing. That is praising God. Who can you be encouraging towards in your daily life? The second idea we had, expressing my trust in God, is praising God. Jesus has taught us about the evil thoughts that come out of our mouth. That's the verses in Matthew 15 I mentioned earlier. And James has taught us that cursing other people is not what our tongue is made for. In addition to that, we figured that saying negative things which express our worries and our fears about situations in life can also be something our tongue is not made for. It is much more a praise of God when we use words that express our trust in Him. That again will have to come from our hearts first. It needs to be something we really know deep in our hearts so that we don't have to worry about or disagree with what we are given. I find that very hard sometimes, especially at the moment with the travel restrictions around the world. My flight to Germany was supposed to be in 3 weeks. I was really looking forward to seeing my friends and family, to enjoy running in the Alps, and then to have a big wedding celebration with all my family and friends. All this is cancelled. No flights, no visiting friends, no summer in the Alps, no wedding celebration. And everyone tells me that New Zealand is the best place to be stuck at the moment. And yes, I agree. But my heart tells me this is not fair. I want to go home. I want to see my people. It was such a good plan. Trusting that God has a bigger picture of my life and of this whole world is my daily task. And expressing this trust with my words, saying, I know, Lord, you only want the best for me. I know you are a provider, a good father. You're the same here and the same in Germany. You look after me. Saying this, that is praising Him. Which situations can you bring before God and let your tongue form words of trust? And the next days, I'll be reading James 3, verses 13 to 18, and ask myself the questions, what is the truth in these verses? Am I living by this truth? And what would my life look like if I always lived by this truth? And what do I need to do? James 3, 13 to 18 says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness.